Marcus Hale had spent 3 years building himself into someone his younger self wouldn't have recognized. A tech company at 24, a Forbes feature at 27, a penthouse in Manhattan at 29, and now at 31, a wedding on the grounds of his Connecticut estate. The kind of wedding that gets photographed for magazines, planned by consultants, and attended by people who wear watches worth more than most people's cars. Everything was perfect. The arch was draped in white linen that caught the morning breeze like sails. Bridesmaids wore blush. Groomsmen wore tan. His bride, Cassandra, luminous, rehearsed, spectacular in every way the word could mean, had walked toward him with the precision of a woman who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. And in a way, she had. Marcus just didn't know yet how much of it was preparation and how little of it was love. The ceremony had just reached the vows. The officiant, Father Brennan, a man Marcus had known since his grandmother's church in Baltimore, had opened the small leather book, cleared his throat, and was about to speak when someone in the groomsman line shifted uncomfortably. Then a bridesmaid made a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a word. Then everyone saw her. She came from the side entrance of the garden, the one that faced the public road. She walked slowly, deliberately, the way someone walks when they've made a decision they know they cannot take back. Her clothes were destroyed, genuinely, not theatrically. A torn, dirt-stained top, pants with the knees blown out, hair matted on one side like she'd slept against pavement, feet in sandals held together by something that might have been tape. She looked like someone the world had thoroughly used up and discarded, except for her eyes. Her eyes were focused, sharp, fixed on Marcus with a kind of recognition that doesn't need introduction, the kind that crosses years and loss and silence without effort. Marcus saw her, and his hand dropped from Cassandra's, not dramatically, not like a movie, just dropped, like his body already knew something his mind hadn't caught up to yet. "Nadia," he said. It wasn't a question. 7 years earlier, Marcus Hale was nobody. He was a 24-year-old graduate student living in a one-bedroom apartment in Baltimore, eating ramen that he bought in bulk, coding until 3 a.m., and sharing everything, every fear, every dream, every failed prototype, with a woman named Nadia Owens. Nadia was studying social work. She wasn't interested in money or influence. She was interested in people, specifically the ones that systems had failed. She volunteered on weekends at a transitional housing center. She gave her own grocery money away twice in a single semester. She believed, genuinely and without irony, that people deserved better than what the world usually gave them. She also believed in Marcus before there was any rational reason to. When his first startup collapsed and left him with $40,000 in debt, she worked double shifts as a hospital aide and didn't tell him until the end of the month when the bills were paid. When his second idea was rejected by 11 investors, she sat beside him on their apartment floor at midnight and said, quietly, not as comfort, but as fact, "You're going to figure this out, and when you do, it won't be because of talent. It'll be because you didn't quit." He proposed to her in that apartment, no ring, because there was nothing to buy a ring with, just a question, and her saying yes, and both of them crying in a way that people only cry when the feeling is bigger than they have language for. She was the only person who had ever seen the whole of him and chosen to stay. Marcus's company went public 18 months after he and Nadia got engaged. The success came fast and came completely, and with it came Cassandra Voss, A corporate strategist, a social architect, a woman who understood exactly how powerful men work and exactly what they need to believe about themselves. She was strategic about it. She didn't pursue Marcus. She positioned herself until he pursued her. She made herself indispensable, professionally first, then personally. She studied what he admired. She reflected it back. She was patient in a way that only people with long-term plans can be. And during those 18 months, as Marcus traveled constantly and worked impossibly and slowly became someone new, she worked quietly on the one thing standing between her and what she wanted. She found Nadia. She introduced herself not as a threat, but as a concerned colleague. She showed Nadia a photograph, fabricated but flawlessly so, of Marcus with another woman. She told Nadia about dinners that didn't happen, hotel receipts that were forged. She built a lie with the patience and craftsmanship of someone who understood that the most effective deceptions aren't dramatic. They're quiet, incremental, delivered with sadness rather than malice. Nadia didn't confront Marcus. She loved him too much to want to embarrass him. She loved him too much to cause a scene. She loved him so much that when the lie told her he had outgrown her, she believed it, because it was exactly the fear she had always carried, that one day he would become someone she couldn't keep up with. She left a letter, told him he deserved someone who matched where he was going, told him she was proud of him, told him she'd always remember the apartment floor. She didn't leave a return address. Nadia lost her apartment 3 months after leaving Marcus, the one she'd been paying for largely alone. Her double shifts ended when her mother had a stroke. She moved back to Baltimore to be a caregiver. The social work degree never got finished. The certification she needed to advance never came. One crisis led to another, with the ruthless efficiency that poverty is famous for. By the time she'd stabilized her mother's care and gotten herself to something resembling solid ground, 4 years had passed. She found Marcus not through intention, but accident. A news segment about a tech entrepreneur's upcoming wedding. She almost turned the television off. Then she saw Cassandra's name in the article that followed, and something about it pulled at her, and she started asking questions she hadn't thought to ask 4 years ago, when she was too broken to be curious. What she found took her 3 weeks to piece together. What she found shattered her differently than the original grief had, because this was not loss. This was theft. She had nothing left to lose by the time she stood at the edge of that garden. She had no car, having sold it for her mother's medication. She had taken a bus, then walked 4 miles, because this was the only day there would be no gates between her and the truth. She had one thing in her hand, a ring. She opened her palm and held it toward him, and Marcus went completely still. He extended his hand, not to take from her, but instinctively, the way a person extends their hand toward something they've lost and suddenly found. In her palm was a thin silver band with a small stone, not expensive, never had been. The one he'd given her on an apartment floor when he had nothing. She had kept it, even through everything. "She lied to you," Nadia said. Her voice was quiet, not performative, just true. "She showed me things, made me believe." She stopped, steadied herself. "I need you to know that I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I thought you had. And by the time I knew the truth, it seemed too late." Marcus looked at the ring in her hand for a long moment. Then he looked at Cassandra. And Cassandra, precise, prepared, strategically positioned Cassandra, could not hold his gaze. Why? His voice was low, not a shout, something far more dangerous than a shout. The kind of quiet that only comes from a man who has just watched 7 years of his life rearrange into a shape he doesn't recognize. Why would you do that to her? To us? Cassandra opened her mouth, closed it. The performance had no final act prepared for this. "Because I wanted you," she finally whispered, and she was in the way. The simplicity of it, the smallness of it, was somehow the most devastating part. Marcus turned to Father Brennan. "We're done here." He slipped the wedding band from his jacket pocket and placed it on the draped altar table without ceremony, without drama, like setting down something that was never truly his to carry. Then he turned back to Cassandra one final time. "I'll be speaking to my attorneys Monday morning. Every gift, every account, every arrangement, unwound, every single one. And if what you did to Nadia has a legal name, I'll find it." Cassandra sank to her knees right there in the grass, white gown pooling around her, hands covering her face. The bridesmaids looked away. The groomsmen stood like men watching something they'd never be able to unsee. Marcus walked away from all of it. He found Nadia at the garden's edge, already turning to leave, because that's who she was. She had delivered the truth and expected nothing in return. She had never once operated any other way. "Nadia?" She stopped. "I looked for you," he said, "for years. You hid yourself so well, I thought—" His voice broke, just slightly, just enough. "I thought you were gone. I thought you had just decided I wasn't worth staying for." She turned around slowly. Her eyes were full, but she wasn't crying. She was done collapsing over this. She had done all that collapsing alone years ago in rooms he never saw. "I thought the same about you," she said softly. He exhaled, long, unsteady, honest. "Then we were both lied to," he said, "and we both lost years we didn't have to lose." She looked at him for a long moment. The garden was quiet. The world felt briefly small and entirely theirs. She didn't rush to fill the silence. Neither did he. They had both learned, the hard way, what happens when you fill silence with the wrong things. Finally, she looked down at the small silver ring still resting in her palm. The one she had carried through 4 years of survival, through loss and exhaustion, and the particular loneliness of loving someone you've convinced yourself you'll never see again. She had never once considered leaving it behind. She held it out to him, not as a gesture of romance, but of return. Of returning something to the person it had always truly belonged to. Marcus closed her fingers gently back around it. "Keep it," he said quietly. "You kept it when it meant nothing. I'd like you to keep it now that it means everything."